So welcome everyone. Joining me today is Mustafa, a dynamic senior data engineer with over 10 years of experience driving innovation across telecom, travel, and climate tech. From OpenReach to Jet2 and now Oxwash, Mustafa has built powerful data platforms, led CI/CD transformations, and much more. So welcome, Mustafa. Let's kick things off with a bit more into yourself and what got you into data engineering.
Thank you. Hi, Ghazal. I'm Mustafa, but everyone knows me as Muzzy. I've got 10 years of experience in data. I sort of fell into the role of data. I was initially a telecoms engineer, and that was physical engineering, so climbing telegraph poles and fitting phone lines and that sort of thing. And then the opportunity arose to have a career chat with some of the office-based teams. And I mentioned that I had some aptitude for maths in a younger life. So I was presented with some maths tests, and then off the back of those, I was offered a role as a data analyst. And I didn't really fully comprehend what that was at the time. I'd just come fresh off the apprenticeship, and it was a case of, here, go learn SQL. So I taught myself that, and that was my introduction to the world of data. That from there followed various roles in management grade positions of innovation and kind of operations focused roles. So how do we impact the deployment of certain tasks to the field in engineering and BT and that sort of thing? And yeah, so for a few years that's what I did from there, and progressed onwards, but still predominantly working on-prem SQL, PLSQL code, and for those that remember, Oracle on-prem databases. And yeah, I off the back of that decided that I really liked what was eventually my title, which was data engineer. I really enjoyed the role of data engineering, and my perception of what data engineering was very narrow. I believed I was doing a fully fledged data engineering role by writing these SQL and these procedural languages, until I started to really delve into it and got more exposure and started to understand that actually the world of data engineering was a bit wider than my purview. So I taught myself Python, and then decided I wanted to really focus on data engineering. So I got a role at a local data consultancy firm called the Data Shed. Mm-hmm. And it kind of took it from there. I think that was a bit of a rude awakening, really, joining there, because it was such a great place to work, but you really understood just how much technology you had to understand to go into a fully fledged data engineering role and to become kind of like a well-rounded data engineer. So yeah, I started to pick up various cloud technologies and DevOps systems and like various different skills that were required along the way. And then moved from there to Jet2, which was again another great role, working in the travel sector. Spent a couple of years there, progressed on to senior, and now I'm at Oxwash, which is a newer company, much newer than BT, for instance. But we focus on being a sustainable industrial scale laundry. We're the first carbon neutral laundry in the world. We have science-backed technology that allows us to remove the pollution from the water that's going back into the system, into the water systems. So removing the bleach, removing the microfiber pollution by our water reclamation technology and that sort of thing. So it's a really, really fascinating place to work, and there I get to have kind of holistic, full control over the data estate, which is great, and that's been my first opportunity to kind of own that entirely, which was new, but yeah, it's great fun.
Amazing. And honestly, it sounds like you've had an amazing journey so far, and you're in a great place right now. I guess a lot of people as well recently moving into engineering have made switches similar to yourself, but what might be interesting for them to know is a bit more of how it differs. Obviously, practically it does differ your day-to-day as well, but how does it differ moving from that initial very hands-on role to now you're more technically hands-on rather than physically hands-on, if that makes sense?
So I think at Oxwash, what I get to have full control over is not just deploying things that have been designed, and obviously you get some level of discussion and that sort of thing, but really knowing exactly what architecture you're wanting to adopt and how that's going to apply to the entire data estate and how that impacts it and how everything interconnects, and that sort of thing. I think when you're at a bigger firm where you're kind of you're part of a wider organization, kind of doing a lot, and potentially you might be in a particular pillar of that organization. Oftentimes you don't get to have that full view of what's going on at the business, whereas when you're in a kind of a smaller, I guess, scale up phase, what you find is that you have to make sure that everything has like a really nice synergy with each other. So one element that you might deploy at one point, you should have considerations for how that potentially would be able to plug into there and what other opportunities that might unlock for other areas of the business. So across finance, operations, sales, you have to kind of see all those things. And then you have to obviously the other stuff, which is kind of like the more nitty gritty stuff. So you have to worry about like the costs. You have to be aware of pricing alerts and that sort of thing. So there's definitely a difference between stepping from a bigger business into that, and I think probably that's where you get more of you do have that more technically hands-on experience, because I guess you have to that's the expectation.
Yeah, of course. And then in the last couple of years, like you say, it's been almost 10 years in this space. How have you seen the industry change over the last couple of years, would you say?
So I think for me, there's been a few things. I mean, obviously AI. That's the topic. I won't immediately jump to there because I think that's quite it's spoken about widely at the moment. So I'll go probably slightly further back. I think ELT has replaced ETL as the default now, particularly with the move to cloud, and it makes a lot of sense. So compute is faster, storage is cheap. So it makes more sense for you to load all of the raw data into a data warehouse and then not lose any opportunity because you're trying to answer a question initially and then load that data into the data warehouse. What you're doing is you're loading everything. So even the opportunities that you might not be immediately aware of, for instance, you don't lose out on those further down the line by not being able to then say have that full bank of raw data available to you when you're trying to explore what analysis you can draw out of something. So that's definitely a big change, and tools like DBT and Dataform and that enable like version control and the ability to like layer models with some centralized logic, and that's kind of played into that as well, I believe. And like I say, it's the freedom to not tie yourself into the immediate questions you're trying to answer, but allowing yourself not to lose the opportunity, I guess, down the line. I guess the other one I would definitely mention is data is definitely a product now. So data always held value, always. I guess the reality is how much value you tap into, which is still true to a lot of extents. But data is genuinely, it's a product in its own right now. So data governance, quality standards, you have specific data owners, and oftentimes you have SLAs in place that really make sure that there's a focus on reliability, usability, and the effectiveness for the business. So they're probably the things I'd say have changed predominantly over the longer view. Obviously, AI is starting to come in and be the dominant conversation piece now, however.
Yeah. And then in terms of AI itself, how have you seen like the advancements in the last couple of years, and what sort of impacts have they had on you guys as a team or on the tech space, would you say?
So I'll focus on data engineering. I think that's probably the place I'll be able to comment most upon, and I think it's probably got a few elements to it. So I know it's easy from someone who writes code regularly to feel it can sometimes feel like a bit daunting, like there's something coming that potentially could make certain roles redundant in the business, and that's certainly a possibility. But I like to view it myself as kind of like the next instance of assistance, I guess. So it's the next stage in assistance for us. So we used to just use books and documentation, and then we moved to community forums, and then it now becomes AI. So it's gone from Stack Overflow to having you know, a ChatGPT, a DeepSeek, something like that available to you, and that's just the way for you to be able to potentially troubleshoot quicker and that sort of thing. So that's kind of one layer to it. I think the other one is that from a practical development term, it really can boost your speed of development. So vibe coding's like a big thing now, and that's certainly been introduced into my development process. I have, like, for instance, I have Claude Code in my dev container in my local development environment, which I think should be treated like cautiously. So understanding the logic up front, which we have from having so many years experience having to write it physically by hand and understand all those things, that stands you in good stead to really understand what it is you're trying to deploy. So like vibe coding should be used with caution, but it is a way to cut out the laborious like boilerplate code that you might have to write, and that's like repeated regularly and that sort of thing. Obviously not fully repeated, but you know, like concepts that you might commonly use and that sort of thing. So that will speed you up. But what I think is that it has to be used almost as if it's a pair programming exercise or a junior developer that you're working with. So potentially there is mistakes you have to be aware of. You can't ever trust that it's going to do the right thing, intrinsically can't trust that sort of thing. So if you treat it as a junior developer and you go through the proper process of checking the libraries that it's trying to use, understanding the security that you want to have in place there that it might have overlooked, properly understanding the test suites and that sort of thing, and having any changes that they might have made to your code base properly peer reviewed and you know, going through the real process that you would treat a junior developer like, then it can really just be a source to help you and assist you. My experience with it personally has been that it's reasonably good, but I have spent times. I tried as a bit of a test process. I tried to get it to write a full microservice from scratch. I'm doing a just to go off a bit of a tangent. I'm on my LinkedIn at the minute. I'm doing a personal MSc that I'm designing. That I took some inspiration from the Personal MBA, which is a book I've read. But yeah, so as part of that, I tried to do a full microservice deployed by an AI agent as part of vibe coding. And what I found was that I spent arguably just as much time debugging, getting it to you know, tighten up and certain things that I had to consider that, you know, to reflect it. So vibe coding definitely has its place and it can definitely speed up the process, but it has to be used correctly and has to be used in a way that you don't hand over the reins fully to it. There's other things that I find very enjoyable. So documentation, if you speak to any data engineer, documentation is probably one of the more painful things that we have to do, but it's very necessary. Having AI available to you means that documentation can become a lot easier and a lot simpler, and explanations that you might have less had to think about means a lot become quite a bit simpler. The other one, which I think is actually really beneficial, is edge cases in test suites. So is there a consideration that you haven't quite thought of, having an AI agent? If you say to it, for instance, Claude Code, if you say ask it to identify gaps that you might potentially miss from your test suite on the basis of the code base, that can be a really effective way of utilizing it and making sure that you have not just test coverage, but kind of like situational coverage as well. So I definitely think it can boost the development process. But another one which I think is really exciting is I think it expands data access beyond the data team. So currently, if people want to have people from other areas of the business who potentially aren't who are non-technical, there has to be a request into the data team to go retrieve the data, and then I know there's certain softwares in place, but what AI I think can really unlock is a semantic layer coupled with AI means that non-technical people can probably start to have conversational queries of the database. So it removes that bottleneck of having to like log a request with the data team. They can go and self-serve, and it really democratizes the data. But also then it frees up the data team to really focus on the things that are really technical, that are like getting new data sets into the data data to really enable change that way. So I'm positive about it. I think it can really really boost the development process, and definitely can supercharge businesses if used correctly.
100%. And like you said, it's using it as a support rather than just blindly putting your trust into AI and ChatGPT. If you think of it, and I think this is the best way I've heard anyone describe it so far, is if you think of it as a junior developer, a junior engineer, and use it that way, it would be much more helpful to yourself, where you're fact checking it, double checking everything that you're getting out of it, rather than just blindly going, okay, this is 100% going to be right. Let me go put it into my company database.
Absolutely, I think that's summarised exactly how I like to look at it. I think if you had a new member of the team coming in, you would give them the freedom to write and construct pipelines themselves, but you wouldn't then just, I mean, with anyone, even seasoned developers, you wouldn't just allow people to push into production without having those guardrails in place and those checks. So I think use it with caution and understand its capabilities, but also its limitations.
And in terms of younger generations, what sort of advice do you have for them looking to join the industry? I mean, I know what we're seeing lately is a lot of people coming from different backgrounds, not traditionally like the computer science degree background. What are your thoughts on that?
So I have a little bit of concern for newer people wanting to come in, and I think so we've talked about really the positives of AI, and it still kind of stems from that. So I think the temptation will be there with vibe coding to just allow that to do the work for you. It will be very easy to do. You can pretty much just go online now and find a vibe coding agent without having any real exposure to like data engineering or developing prior to that. You can find it's very simple. And while that's great and it churns things out really fast, what you'll find is that if you don't understand the theory behind it, you will create problems for yourself that you won't be able to understand or fix or troubleshoot, improve performance with, or anything down the line. So and I'm not talking about like asking ChatGPT how Cloud works or something like that. I'm more talking about build me like a full microservice with PubSub and Event Arc and all those things. That then becomes problematic, because if you don't understand how it works, how are you going to debug it? It's almost like you've created that drawer everyone has in the house where they've got all the cables in.
Yeah.
That's the you're going to be now, because you don't understand it, and you're not understanding the things that you're even having to ask the agent to do because you're not aware of them. So I say it's going to be tempting, but spend the time to read and understand the technology properly before you do it. Caveat to that, it's less daunting than you think. So that would be my second layer of advice. It's less daunting than you think. There's plenty of resources out there for you to give it a go with. GCP has labs all over the place on its documentation for you to try certain things out, and it's very easy to get started. Similarly with like SQL and Python, like you can just do them very simply from your own laptop. So give it a go. It is genuinely, I know there's a lot of hard work that's gone into it and things, but it's genuinely a really, really nice industry to work in. So I'd encourage people to give it a go, and yeah, see where it takes you.
Amazing. Lovely advice as well. Is there anything else you wanted to go through on the podcast or?
That's been a lovely chat. For those that are wanting to check out my personal MSc that I mentioned earlier, there's a book by Josh Kaufman. Apologies, I just his name slipped my mind. By Josh Kaufman, called The Personal MBA, and I took inspiration from that to start to design my own personal MSc in data engineering and AI, and I'm posting about it regularly on my LinkedIn. So if anyone wants to follow, it's Muzzy Al-Moozany on LinkedIn, and you can check it out.
Amazing, yeah, and we'll also link it when we publish this episode as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that.